Thank you for joining Dr. James Rini and I, the Curiosity Conduit, Dana Ortiz, for a look behind the curtain of letting destiny deliver. Dr. Rini is a practicing psychotherapist for the last 46 years, and I'm a retired law enforcement officer with 26 years experience, and I'm now a psychology student. Please feel free to add comments or ask questions below, and make sure to subscribe and like. Dr. Rini or I will be happy to answer any questions you have. So, congratulations! You have made it to chapter 3. And the hope is that you are beginning to see how important opposing forces are to your self health system of mind and body. Today, we will be discussing spirituality, the third dimension of consciousness. This conversation may lead to feelings of inspiration and curiosity, and it could also create some inner movement. That's all welcome. Life will reveal your destiny through all opportunities you keep yourself available for. So, allow yourself to stay open and let's see what destiny delivers. Okay, so Dr. Rini, what is this third dimension of consciousness called spirituality? What is this?
Well, the brain has neurons that are specialized in being transcendent. And that's why people all over the world, without even knowing each other, have all had some sort of God that they worship because it's built into the brain. And a lot of stuff that I discuss here or that we're discussing basically has to do with our neurology and physiology. And then there's the consciousness, which is another dimension. So spirituality is innate in human beings. Unfortunately, as I like to say to my wife, I have no problem with spirituality. The problem I have is a lot of times how man ruins the concept of transcendence because it becomes there are other motives, whether they're political or financial or economical or whatever. So spirituality is that part of the brain that has a transcendent function. And all these parts of the brain need to come to work together. And so what I've tried to do is create a framework by which to understand spirituality and how you can apply it practically in your life.
Okay, it's very interesting. And you talk about transcendence. Some people may not understand what that means. So, what do you mean by that?
That, well, just believing in God, that is not something you can see, can't prove there's a God. We believe in God. Okay. And so that belief is in our mind. And it goes beyond what we know from our senses and our everyday experience with the material world. So that's what transcendent means. It goes beyond what can be seen or touched or felt physically.
So, your book talks about how spirituality can be repressed, suppressed, broken, or neglected, but never eradicated. What does that mean?
Well, people have all kinds of various views about God. Well, because we kind of can use God and spirituality, people use that synonymously. Okay. We can call it a higher power or whatever things, because it is a part of the brain that needs to express itself. If you don't express it, it causes a problem. You know, when you go to the hospital, they won't let you go until your bowels are moving. Okay. Because if they're not moving, you're going to have a problem because you're suppressing or repressing the need to remove those toxins.
Right.
So anything that is a part of who we are needs to be integrated and not eradicated. And that's what we always try to do. People look at things as black and white, and it's like, well, if I just didn't have this anxiety anymore, I want to get rid of this anxiety. No, that's not the way it works. Anxiety is a normal, natural, biological signal that in eradicating it, you're causing yourself problems. It's like if you don't feel pain, you're a danger to yourself. Now, we don't want to feel pain, but if you don't feel it, you're more at risk than you are if you do feel pain. So that's the problem when we don't like something or don't agree something and we want to eradicate it. That isn't what it does. It's still in there. It's just going to come out sideways in ways you don't understand. when you ask those why questions.
So, what are some undesirable or unpredictable consequences if if a person's spirituality has been suppressed, broken, repressed, neglected?
I like to use analogies. It's like, what are the consequences if you lose any sensory system? If you can't walk, that's a motoric system. It's not a sensory system. What happens if you can't walk? You're forever bound to a wheelchair. Okay. Your lifespan is shortened because of the limitations that come. You can't have other experiences. It denies you. Okay, I'll give you a more specific example. The loss of a loved one. Okay, and we all were going to lose loved ones because we're guaranteed death. And that's a very difficult thing to deal with if you're really attached and connected to that person, to think you're never going to see them again, never going to be able to interact with them or share things with them. But what I like to say in helping people deal with that, and it's a spiritual approach in that the relationship doesn't end. The relationship continues because you have memories, you have experiences, there are things that they have told you and influenced you, that live on within you and also live on in your relationship with them. My mom died when I was 29, and one of the things she said before she died, she goes, if there's a life hereafter, you can be sure I'll be parenting you from there. So do you think I ever forgot that? No. And to this day, I'll think, yeah, she would approve of my wife and they'd have a good relationship and she'd love my kids and all the ways that if she were alive, she would give me input or have reactions. Well, that's a spiritual relationship. Okay. It's not a tangible physical one, but they live on within me through all our memories and experiences, and I tell stories today about a lot of those experiences. Picked Orlando to go to college simply because I could go home every weekend and visit my family. I'd go home every Sunday around 12 o'clock, and my mom would make me lunch and do my laundry. And my dad would bitch. He goes, why do you have to do his laundry? Why do you have to feed him? Blah. And
Hey, any good mother does that, okay?
he never, ever offered, ever, to make me a sandwich, feed me, or do my laundry. Never offered to do anything for me. So anyway, my mother gets diagnosed with lung cancer. And I come home that weekend and my father says to me, he goes, Jim, can I make you a sandwich? And my mother says, Frank, I think I'm going to die now, because he had never said that. And it just amazed her. So those kinds of memories live on. And then what came after that, because it was a signal that he was transforming. He was becoming a different person. And after she died, she wasn't dead a week. And he goes, now I understand all the things your mom was trying to tell me.
Mm.
So that relationship lives on. And I probably love her more. I won't say probably. I do love her more today, 40 years later than I did when she died. So that's why I say the relationship doesn't end. It just becomes a spiritual one. After she died, I had a dream where she was in the car with me. And she looked good because with the cancer and she had a stroke, she looked horrible. I mean, and the only thing I remember or that happened in the dream, I said, can you still love me from there? And she goes, yes, you know, and that was the end of the dream. Now, I never dream about people in my life or things that happen. That's always something totally different. But what that dream was doing for me was redefining my relationship with my mom. One, that she was in a better place because she looked better. And two, that love lives on, whether she's here or there or everywhere, you know? And so that's what I say you have to do. You have to redefine your relationship with them. So there's those 5 stages of grief, and denial is the first one, and acceptance is the last one. And there's, depression and anger and bargaining before you get to acceptance. And to me, really what that process, what you're doing is you're going from having that relationship taken away from you to redefining the relationship. If you get stuck on that relationship has been taken away from me, you'll always be in a state of denial and never go to acceptance. But if you redefine that relationship, like I did with my mom and my dreams, then you can get to acceptance, which isn't I agree. It's just, it is what it is. And therefore, and so, yeah, I've had she'd be like 99 if she were alive today. So that relationship lives on.
Super.
I tell my children about her, talk to her about her with my wife. That's how we live on.
That's sweet. I know everybody handles stuff like that differently.
But that's what I'm saying. It's a spiritual modality. It's that transcendent function. We make myths. Myths are created to fill the gap between what's known and what we don't know. And what's funny, a lot of the things that we thought were myths, we actually are finding historical things that substantiate some of those stories. So that's why spirituality cannot be eradicated, because you're handicapping yourself. You're taking your own legs out from underneath you.
That's good. I like that. So Dr. Carl Jung saw this crisis on spirituality and wrote, through scientific understanding, our world has become dehumanized. Man feels himself isolated in the cosmos. He is no longer involved in nature and has lost his emotional participation in natural events, which hitherto had a symbolic meaning for him. So, can you discuss what Dr. Jung was talking about here?
Science has very strict standards and procedures by which it comes to knowledge. Okay. And it does that to try to make it as objective as possible. The transcendent function is the opposite of that. It doesn't work like that. Like, it is a scientific fact that every hour is 60 minutes long. Is it not? A
Yes.
scientific fact. Yes. Okay. But is it also not a fact that every hour is not experienced as the same length of time?
Yes, definitely a fact.
A watch pot never boils, and time flies when you're having fun, just to use two cliches there.
Definitely cliche.
Yes. But where did those cliches come from? Because what's more important is the transcendent experience of time, not the objective experience of time. The objective experience of time is helpful because I know, hey, I got an hour in real time to get X, Y, and Z done. But what really matters is our experience of time. If we are bored to death, we are bored to death. It doesn't matter how long it's been. And people do not like to be bored. But if you're having fun, you don't want it to end, and time goes fast at the end. So that transcendent function, he's saying, has been lost. And not only has that been lost, but in the process, we become dehumanized. I mean, just look at how people treat people today.
Oh, it's terrible.
Okay. Because we've become so dehumanized. We're objects. Okay.
And people fill in the blanks with negative and bad information if they don't know something.
Right. And that's dehumanizing. All these labels are dehumanizing. All the things that are divisive are dehumanizing. And technology is dehumanizing. Okay. I mean, they call it social media. There's nothing social about it. It's the opposite. It's anti-social media. Because people then don't know how to socialize in real life. Or they don't, or people who aren't able to socialize because they have anxiety or fears of rejection. They have relationships on a computer, but that's the only relationships they have. And that isolates us. So technology does that too. And the cosmos, which is the universe, I mean, you feel like a speck of dust. I had a client one time said, it was a long time ago, but she was basically saying, I'm one of billions of people. I don't matter. And I say, well, the sun is one of billions of suns, but it kind of matters because we wouldn't be here without it. So again, it dehumanizes her. It took away any feelings of being more than she is, you see. And that's also spirituality. You're more than you are. Christ wasn't just a person, he was God. And so we no longer can participate, like American Indians, when they kill something, they would pray to it or just thank it, and be very humble in taking the food, as opposed to greed, where let's kill millions and sell them and make all this profit. People kill elephants for their ivory and, or kill them through the ivory.
This also makes me think about like research and stuff in the outliers and how they get rid of that and just look at the generalization.
And that's true. I mean, and that's what digital does. It just has plus or, you're either there or not there. It's black or white. There's no gray, which eliminates 80%.
And that's terrible because I love working in the gray.
Yeah. But once you don't even know that you've lost it because it's never been there for you if you've never had it. Okay, so before, a snake embodied different things and thunder was God expressing himself. We don't do those things. We don't believe in werewolves anymore. We don't believe in
Mystical things.
mystical things, yeah, because science has explained everything. It hasn't, but we think it has. And so we've lost that symbolic participation in nature, which is, again, a part of the brain. The unconscious is symbolic, it's analogical, it's linear. That's why the conscious mind doesn't understand dreams, because the conscious mind will interpret them literally when they're symbolic, and you reach a certain point where you will never recover what we've lost because it's too far gone.
You mean as a whole or the individual?
Well, if you're in a wheelchair and you don't use your legs, what happens? The muscles atrophy and you never get them back.
I will never say never. So I can't think that way.
Well, I
I have
appreciate
sure
that.
in general.
And there is truth to never say never,
Yeah.
but it's ironic because in never saying never, you're saying it twice.
Ha ha ha. Aren't you so funny?
It's one of those double binds. It's paradox. Everything has its paradox,
Okay, let's get back on task here. So this next question that I want to ask you, this is something where I felt uncomfortable with conversations, with words of God and spirituality in it. So anybody listening right now who feels uncomfortable, not rejecting the ideas, but just feels uncomfortable with the conversation just because of the hearing spirituality, what kind of advice would you give them?
Okay, great question. You're not supposed to talk about politics or religion. It has all kinds of connotations. Okay, I'm a scientist. I am not a pastor or a priest or any of those things. So as I speak of this, even though on the one hand I'm saying science isn't everything, okay. So when I'm talking about, again, I'm talking about a function of the brain. Okay, just like a function of the brain, we have mirror neurons, which allow us to be empathetic. Okay, but we're not all born with mirror neurons. There are people that are born without them, or a very low number of them.
Really?
Yeah. And they have no ability to empathize. They can intellectualize what you must feel and what you're going through, but they don't feel the feeling.
That makes so much sense. That makes so much sense now because I'd actually studied this years and years ago to learn more about what was happening to us as law enforcement officers on the scene and what we were seeing, what was happening, what was going through the individual with the mirror neurons. But that makes sense that everybody had maybe different levels or not.
Some have none, which works great in that situation because you don't get emotionally involved. But then you pay a price for it in your personal life because then you can't, relationships are all about emotions. What relationship doesn't push buttons or produce feelings? So when we're talking about spirituality, I'm talking about a function of the brain. Man has come up with words like spirituality or God or higher. So I'm just talking about a function of the brain, and these are the only words that we have that everyday people use when they're talking about that part of the brain, because you even had me define what does transcendent mean. So here we're using more of a, neurological terms rather than one, and it doesn't have the same connotations you see as God or spirituality.
Yeah.
But I'm calling it that because it also adds something to it. Okay.
Well, something that's more tangible.
Well, again, to the earlier thing, there's symbolic meaning there. Okay, that gets lost when we have to say the word transcendent part of the brain, neurological. They're great words, but they don't, they don't say you can't talk about, religion, politics, or neurology, because neurology doesn't have any connotations to it. I mean, a lot of people don't even understand it. Most people don't.
So what I'm hearing is that you're saying is it's okay for them to feel uncomfortable and to really look at it in a different light, as you just explained.
Yes, it's okay to look at it however you're looking at it. Really, what we're talking about is a function that the brain has. Like people have computers, and there's so many functions they don't know how to use. You understand what I'm saying? So they never use they may just use the computer as a word processor. They don't know how to use PowerPoint or other kinds of things. So I'm giving, again, another tool that is key in being able to regulate your biological, physiological, social, and psychological mechanisms that we are born with as human beings. Again, because as human beings, we are born into a pattern, and we're managed by that pattern, whether we fulfill it or suppress it, because it takes effort to suppress things too. So therefore, it's managing us in that way. So no, whatever you feel or believe, I'm just telling you, hey, here's a part of the brain that, because in my book, I go, you just have a myth. It's a myth about life after death. And we need a myth about life. Even if you believe that there's nothing, that's okay. That's your myth. And that myth worked for you, because I've had people, I don't want to exist after this. Many people want to live forever. So you create a myth. A myth is how you fill the gap between what's known and not known. Just like science fiction becomes science. It goes, hypnosis used to be in the realm of parapsychology. But since it can be scientifically proven, it's now science. It's truth. It's no longer parapsychology, it's psychology.
That's good stuff. I think wherever I ever gotten turned off in the past is when I felt a certain way and it was not okay but from somebody else is like, and I'm here to say it is okay for you to believe, as you call it, your myth.
Yeah.
That's okay. I have mine, you have yours. But when everybody, or well, not everybody, but in certain people or religions trying to shove it down your throat, it makes you want to go the other way.
But see, the brain creates myths. I mean, if you look back in time, the Iliad and the Odyssey, and King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, the brain naturally creates myths. It's a function of the brain. Okay. And these are the things we're talking about. How does our mind, our body, our brains, how they function, so that you can be able to master the keyboard of how your mind, body, and brain function. We use the words we use, which are the best I have, but it's not to in any way put something down and something better. These are just the words that we universally have to talk about these subjects that scientists talk about in a different way.
Okay, so I'm going to read a quote. When properly tapped, spirituality allows you to transcend the harmful effects of oppression, limiting beliefs, science, technology, and misinformation. I cannot get enough of that. I feel it. It is there. Please respond to that statement.
Well, the thing that comes to mind, and this is something I've heard, it's obviously something I didn't directly experience, that during slavery, African Americans were very spiritual and had a strong belief in God, because their reward was in the afterlife, because all life presented to them was suffering. And that belief in that reward in the afterlife allowed them to transcend the harmful effects of the slavery, of the oppression, of all the things that they must have gone through.
So, I mean, we're really looking at the difference between happiness and, depression or being unhappy.
Well, yeah, but another way I would phrase it, it's the difference between having hope and being hopeless. If you believe there's something better for you after this, you have hope. If this is the best it's going to get, then you're hopeless. And I'll just throw this in there. Hope was in Pandora's box. I don't know that many people know that. But it's the one thing that did not leave the box. So hope's a very interesting concept. But we're much better off having hope than being hopeless. When you're hopeless and feel helpless, you get depressed, because you're not going to overcome whatever it is you're needing to overcome when you're feeling helpless and hopeless.
Well, it's true. And when you and properly tapping into your spirituality, and it talks about here transcending the harmful effects of oppression and limiting beliefs, it just allows you to see things totally different. And before us even starting this, when I was working in law enforcement, I used to say it's time to do 180 on the room. You turn 180 degrees, you're in the same room, but everything looks completely different. And that's just really how I take this, because it's true and I felt it. And it's an amazing, amazing thing that it just brings this pure joy. That's what I have to say about that.
Well, and it is a function of the brain. It's there to help us. It's there to help us emotionally and to adapt and intellectually. And and to understand things we can't wrap our intellect around.
Okay, so real quick here, what are some uplifting signs that a person is reconnecting with their spirituality?
Well, like one of the things that people say is they feel reborn, they feel saved. It's, it's like we get a new start. People is amazing. God visits jails all the time because how many people have a religious conversion when they're in jail?
I have one.
Yeah.
They feel that they're not alone.
Mm. See? Thank you. That's new knowledge for me.
I
People
actually have a
had-
painting. I have a painting that's sold with that. It's called You're Not Alone.
and that's and again, that's how that transcendent function lifts us up. We don't feel like we're alone.
Yes.
And again, it's just a function of the brain. Because even if you don't believe in God, and I'm not the first person to say this, that's a religion as well. Because that's what you believe. There is no God. And you believe that as stringently as somebody who believes in God believes in God. So it's a religion too. It's that paradox, like never say never.
Okay. Do you have anything else that you'd like to say? We went a little bit longer on this time.
Yeah, I was going to say, no, I've already talked too much.
Okay. Yeah, I think yeah. Just kidding.
I know.
Okay, so thank you for joining Dr. Rini and I on this journey behind the curtain of letting destiny deliver. Join us next time as we will be discussing how faith in the unconscious empowers us and the unconscious empowers faith. Remember, questions or comments are welcome below. Now ask yourself, what part of your life might destiny be trying to speak through right now? Keep exploring, stay curious, and remember, destiny isn't something you chase, it's something you allow. Until next time, be well.